Alright, now that we have the first instance SQL Server installed on the node 1, let's go to node 2 and do the second phase of this cluster install, which is adding the node. Since we only have 2 nodes, we're adding the second node, and if you have more nodes, you have to keep running the setup and adding the each node. Alright, so same way as before, we are going to run the setup. Again, I'm running as administrator because it's Windows 2008, and I don't want to have any failures with my setup, so I'm running it as an administrator to make sure that I have proper permissions. It's going to open the setup window. Let's wait for that. While we're waiting for that window, so we can see all the installation, the resources created as part of this installation. You see SQL Server agent, and you notice this instance name next to this. So it's the instance name, if you remember, we gave as I2. So it installed I2 instance, and it also provided, this is the IP address I provided as part of the SQL Server setup. So it has all that configured. So this is our installation center. When you run setup, this is the first window you'll see. In this, we are going to the installation tab, and we are going to select add node to a SQL Server failover cluster. So we're clicking on that. So as you notice here, since we installed it as a single node instance, will not be able to failover because this instance is not known by the node 2 yet. And also you see the preferred owner list. So if you click on this first instance, which I installed before, that's the 2 node instance. I already ran add node and all that. You see here the preferred owner list shows you node 1 and node 2, and you'll be able to, when you say failover, it shows you move resources to node 1. But if you go here, you don't see that preferred owner list, which is blank because there's only one node. And if you go to move service, it actually tells you that you can move, but I'm pretty sure you'll not be able to know. Let's try it. Okay, move IT to node 2, right? Okay, the action did not complete. An error occurred moving the cluster service. The operation failed because either the specified cluster node is not the owner of the group, or the node is not a possible owner. Yeah, so the second one is right. So it's not a possible owner. We don't have it added as possible owner because we haven't installed anything related to this instance on the node 2. Alright, so we have this window now. So we are working on the right side window now. So it's going through the setup support rules as before, and everything is passed, which means we can go ahead and click OK. Now it's going to do the setup check. It opens the actual window where we are going to perform the setup, and it's going to do the setup checks. Let's wait for it to open. So while we're waiting, so like I said, so we don't have the possible owners, and that's why we're not able to fail over these resources to node 2. Alright, so setup support files, install. Install is in progress. Like I said, these support files will be installed every time you run the setup. The prerequisites, installation prerequisites, so you need to install the Windows installer, .NET framework. Oh, and that's the difference. If you notice, in 2005 the Windows installer and .NET framework, those used to be installed as well automatically as part of the setup, but not anymore in 2008. You had to install the Windows installer, the .NET framework manually, and also any other prerequisites like the file stream hotfix and things like that. Alright, so we're still waiting for it to open. Come on, what happened? So while we're waiting for that, and I'm hoping that we'll be seeing that window pretty soon, the installation window. While we're waiting for that, I just want to show you the maintenance tab. So this is where if you want to remove a node from a cluster, or if you want to completely uninstall a SQL Server cluster, you have to run this remove node option to remove the nodes one by one from each. So you have to run this option from each node, and then at the end, once the final node has been removed, your SQL Server installation is completely removed. Now this option addition upgrade is to upgrade your existing 2008 existing SQL Server installation, be it 2000 or 2005 to 2008. So we looked at the rolling upgrade scenario where you could upgrade a passive node. This is the option you'll be using when you're planning to upgrade a passive node. Alright, so rule check in progress. Setup rule check. Let's see if everything is going to be either passed or a warning. I'm sure that DTC clustered is going to be a warning. There you go. Cluster verification error is going to be a pass, and verification warnings is going to be a warning. And as we noticed before, these last checks take a little longer than all the remaining checks. And if you notice on the left pane here where I told you that you can see the actual installation path, like what's the next window is going to be, if you remember, this list was a longer list before when you installed on the node 1. That's because we were actually installing the full SQL Server 2008 cluster, whereas here we are just adding the nodes, so there are very few options available. So the installation is going to be the setup process is going to be faster, and even that setup actual installation is going to be faster than 2008 the cluster, the first node install. Okay, bear with me for a few more seconds, we're almost there. So while we're waiting for that, I want to show you some other cool things with the cluster. The cluster administrator. First of all, if you notice, the clue admin in 2003, Windows 2003, is revamped in 2008. As you see, there is totally different compared to Windows 2003 clue admin. This is called Failover cluster management. You can also access this using the same clue admin.msc. One very good thing is about the events, the errors. So you can see, so this is the show the critical events is a filtered list of events from the event log. These are nothing but, these are coming from the event log, from your regular event viewer, but these are filtered to only your cluster specific events. So you don't have to go to your event log and then filter, search through all the cluster events. You can see them right away here, because the cluster admin is going to filter those resources based on the event ID and all that. And so you can see that. Not only that, so it shows you appropriate events. Like for example, if you want to see the events related to a specific resource, like SQL Server for example, you can say show the critical events for this resource. And there it shows you only the events, and there is only one because we just installed it. So there is only one event, and this event is when we attempted to fail over to node 2, because it's not available, it failed. So that's the event it's showing. So it only filtering to that specific event. So like that we can get the error messages right from here which is not possible with 2003, and we can get all those filtered as per the thing. And also the event, the cluster admin now is all wizard based. For example, if you want to add a storage, you can do it right from here. Well, there are no available disk now, but you can go through a wizard as opposed to going manually, right clicking on the resource and clicking on the properties and adding all that. So you can, most of these, adding the shared folders, adding a resource, adding the storage, all these are wizard based, and it'll walk you through the process of the adding appropriate resources. Anyway, so our setup support rules are done. There are no errors, only warnings and passed, so we can now go to the next. Same thing here, the product key, it's already pre-filled for me, but if it is not, then you have to add the product key. I clicked on next. I thought at least I did. Okay. Oh, okay. Don't know what happened there. Alright, so then we read through all these terms, license terms, and click on accept the license terms. Don't click on accept before you read through those. Alright, so here, as you see here, it is showing the instance that we want to add the node to. So make sure if you are doing multiple instances simultaneously, or if you are doing multiple cluster installations, make sure that you are selecting the instance that you want to add. So as you remember, I2 is the instance name that we used while we installing the SQL instance on the node 1. And as you see here, it's showing two instances here in this list. One is a default instance which has nodes N2 and N1, and I2 has only N1, so we are going to add node 2 to that. So that's why we are selecting the I2 and clicking on next. Clicking on next. Okay. We're waiting. Okay. Bear with me for a few more seconds. Hopefully, yeah. So the same thing here, the service accounts, it's already pre-filling the accounts we used during the first setup. Notice that you cannot change that. You had to use the same thing. All you have to use is enter the password here, the password for those accounts. And click on next. Send the error reports and feature usage to Microsoft to improve our products. So now it's going through the add node rules check. So before it went through the what is that, cluster rules check. It's now the add node, which is pretty much similar, but there may be some differences if you notice, if you compare them side by side. Everything is passed, or some of them are not applicable, like file stream and analysis services. So we can click on next, and that's it. Pretty straightforward and pretty short compared to the first setup. So this is what you need to run on each node. Click on install, and it's going to go through the similar process as before for the first node. Alright, so let's wait for that to finish, while that is going on, let's go to our troubleshooting here. So let's see, where are we? So we finished the add node. Come on. Okay, so we looked at some of the best practices. So troubleshooting. So when you have some issues with the cluster, not only during the cluster setup, but even after, when you are maintaining your cluster, these are some troubleshooting techniques that you can use to investigate problems and fix the problems with the cluster SQL Server cluster instance. So always the first thing is to check logs. So check application, system and security event logs on all nodes for any possible clues for the problems. And as we've seen before, the cluster admin tool itself has the filtered list of appropriate errors. You can start from there, but you can also look at the logs. So the filter version of the event log, and then you can look at the cluster log. Now this is one difference. Unlike in Windows 2003, we don't have a text-based cluster.log by default in Windows 2008, but you can always, not having the cluster text log doesn't mean that we are not capturing anything related to any cluster events. We are. In fact, we are collecting more than in 2003, but to view those, you need to run this command cluster.exe/cluster with the cluster name, log generate copy, and provide the path where you want to generate the log. So at that point it's going to create the text file, so you can view the text file for any possible error messages. And of course cluster validation reports, that's where you can see we saw the validation reports, an XML based report that shows you all the differences and all the it also not just the difference, it shows you the actual inventory of all the items, like what patches have been installed, what driver levels and all that. So it's a huge report that can also help you at the time of installing any cluster installation problems or troubleshooting of any cluster problems. And SQL Server agent and error logs, that will have, those will also have some good useful information about when, for example, a SQL Server instance, a SQL Server resource fails to come online. You can go into the SQL Server log, the text-based log, to see at what point it is failing. Maybe it's not finding the master databases or any system databases, or whatever the reason is. You can see that in the text SQL Server log. Similarly, agent error log for agent failures. And then the SQL dumper tool. This is another built-in to the SQL Server clustered in failover instance, a dumper tool that dumps information about SQL Server issues. I'll show you that in the demo. I'll show you when once we have our SQL Server setup is done, we can take a look at that. Let's see. Yeah, it's still running. So the setup is still running, so let's wait for that to finish. In the meantime, since you can't ask me any questions, which is good, I'm just kidding, I want to show you, I was planning to show you the rolling upgrade, which I can't find. Let me get to that. Let me see if I can find that, the slide deck that has those. I thought I saved that. I had some rolling upgrade related slides. Okay, maybe here. This one, let's see this one. That's strange. Anyway, let me show you probably this slide that gives you a good idea. So okay, let me unhide the slide. So the upgrade patch, the rolling upgrade of patches is also similar to the rolling upgrade of 2000 to 2008. So we saw here, let me go back to the previous slide. I'm trying to, yeah. So here we saw the rolling upgrade procedure where the you upgrade the passive node and then do the failover. It's the same process even for patching. So if you have already a 2008 cluster, you can do a patching. So this is a sample slide that shows you. So this is a 4-node cluster. So for patching, and let's say you had 2 instances of SQL, FC1 and FC2, as you see there. So you can patch the half of the passive nodes, or half of the nodes, which are the passive nodes, first with your service pack or hotfix or whatever the SQL Server patch. So at that time SQL will be still available, so both FC1 and FC2 will be available for you to access. Now once the upgrade is once you finish the upgrade of passive nodes, you move your FC1 and FC2 instances to the now upgraded nodes, so which means those nodes will become active now, and then the now new passive nodes you will start upgrading the same way as you did before. So while you're failing over these FC1 and FC2, that's when any instance specific upgrades like the system database upgrade or user databases upgrade, anything, so all those scripts will be run during that failover. So that failover may be taking a little longer depending upon the number of scripts it need to run. It will take a little longer, so the downtime will be a little longer during that failover, but the overall downtime compared to the way we used to do in 2005 is very minimal. So that's the advantage. So before we could only do this rolling upgrade at the Windows level. You could do Windows patches the rolling way, the applying on passive node and rebooting and failing over, but now you can do also with SQL Server the rolling upgrade, which drastically minimizes downtime. And I know this is a very welcoming, very needed. Several of my customers asked for this to reduce downtime during maintenance and during patching. So this is very much very anticipated change and very good feature in SQL Server 2008. So you can do this rolling upgrade to minimize your downtime with your SQL Server maintenance and patching. Alright, so that's about the rolling upgrade I wanted to show you. Let's go back to the node. It's still running, so the node is still being added. Let's go to the first node while that is going on, so I can show you some while we're waiting for that. So I showed you show the critical event and show dependency list. So this is the dependency list I was talking about. It's a graphical dependency list that shows you what resource depends on what, which was not possible in Windows 2003. This is a Windows 2008 feature. So it's trying to open the dependency report. Okay, so that is the dependency report. So if you have, I mean, there are only few resources in my case, but if you have multiple disk resources, multiple network names, IP address and all that complex thing, you can see that you can see all that in a graphical fashion, as opposed to going through each resource, right clicking, go to properties, go to dependencies, check the dependencies. You don't have to do all that. It's like very graphical. This used to be there in other competitive cluster tools, and this is very good that we have it now here to see the dependencies. Anyway, so that's one thing, and what else I want to show you here. Alright, to check the quorum configuration settings, you right click on the server name and you click on configure the service or application. From the server name, configure cluster quorum settings. You can also destroy the cluster from here if you want. You don't want to do that, but there is an option available there in case if you want to do it. So you click on configure cluster quorum settings, and that takes you to your wizard. There you go, the wizard, and then you click next there, which shows you the 4 possible quorum configurations available. Now as you see there, node and disk majority is the recommended and the default option for a 2-node cluster with a shared disk available. So you have it can sustain failure of 1 node. So at any given point of time you should have at least 2 node and the disk, the shared disk available for your cluster to be functioning. So if you have the shared disk failure, or if you have more than 1 node failure, your cluster will be down. So there is also a node majority with the first option available there. That's the default for Windows 2003, where your single point of failure is the shared disk. But in this case, even if the disk fails, if you have both nodes available, your cluster will be functioning in the node and disk majority configuration. Alright, so there are other options available, node and file share. So if you have a file share, configure a file share, you can have that as a one of the quorum, one of the witnesses. You don't have to necessarily have a shared disk. You can also have a file share. Alright, our add node progress, as you see in the right side of the screen, the add node progress is done. So it is successfully added the second node into this cluster. The status is successful. You click on next and it shows the log there. So you can click on the summary log to get more information. Same case, even if the add node operation fails, you can click on that link to get more information on what failed. In our case, this is successful, so we don't have to go there. So we now have a 2-node SQL Server 2008 cluster, and now we can click on properties for this cluster group SQL 2K8i2, and it opens up the properties. It opens up the properties any minute now. There you go. So you see the general failover. So there is a preferred owner list there, which is not mandatory, it's optional. So you can choose 1 or more of these nodes as preferred owners. So when in case of failover or failback, it can decide, this cluster can decide which node to fail over to. But what I'm looking for is possible owners. That's important. I think it's under advanced policies. Not dependencies. No, not there. There it is. Possible owners. Yeah, so that's this is required. So all the nodes that you want this cluster to be should fail over to should be mentioned there as possible owners. So you need to know the difference between the possible owners and preferred owners. Possible owners is mandatory, preferred owners is not. Alright, so now let's try a failover. So let's try to failover this cluster group to the newly added node, to the node 2. As you see there,
it's failing over. As you see, the resources are going offline and being moved over to node 2. As you see, the current owner now is node 2, and the resources are going offline on node 1 and will be moved over to node 2 and then come online. As you see there, the resources are coming online. SQL Server is in online pending, so it's trying to come online. So SQL Server and SQL Server agent resources naturally take a little longer for it to come online. SQL Server resource is online, and SQL Server agent should come online in a minute. Alright, there you go. So now we have a successful failover. Let's go to the SQL Server Management Studio, open up to see our instance, the new SQL Server 2008 instance that we just installed. Let's try to browse through it through the Management Studio. We have the client tools installed as part of the SQL Server setup, so we'll open that Management Studio and we'll select our instance. So our virtual name of the server is SQL 2K8 I2, instance name is I2. So we need to, the syntax we should follow is the virtual server name / instance name. So in our case, SQL 2K8 I2 / I2 is our fully qualified name for this SQL Server instance. Alright, there is our instance. We can, as we can see, we have the system databases available there. The server objects there. So we know that we have a working SQL Server 2000 on this 2-node SQL Server cluster. That's a wrap. That's the end of our SQL Server 2008 cluster installation. Thanks for patiently listening into it. If you have any questions, feel free to send an email to our NTSSUZ discussion forum, and I'll try my best to answer those. Thanks once again. Bye-bye.